What is going on, guys? There's obviously some up-and-coming 2024 free agents that are absolutely tearing it up. Think of William Nylander, Elias Pettersson, Sam Reinhart's a guy that I do not think is getting enough praise. So today, I wanted to look at like the top 10 or 12 free agents of next summer and kind of predict what deals they're going to get based on what they've done in the past, based on what they've done this season. So we're going to go through them right now. I'm going to give you the full term, full AAV of their potential deal. Let's go. First up, obviously, we got William Nylander. William Nylander, I am going to go with an 8-year deal for $10.25 million. Before the season, I was saying 9.25 seems about right. Coming off an 87-point season, he has 40 goals. He's a 40-goal scorer at this point. Obviously, he took his game to another level. He realized it's a contract year. He's playing fantastic. He has 22 points in 15 games thus far. Do I think he's going to keep that up and be above 100 points? Probably not, but I think he's going to be in the 90s, the mid-90s now, which you go from 80 points to 87 to, say, 95. At that point, you're a legit superstar. You really can't deny with the way William Nylander is playing. He's been the most consistent player in the team. Obviously, Matthews has the goals because he has 2 hat tricks. Does he? He has 3 hat tricks, I think. So Matthews does have the goals, but on a night in and night out basis, I think William Nylander has been their best player. And when you look at when Mitch Marner, he hit restricted free agency at 22 or 23, he had 94 points that season, and he got 10.9. Granted, that was back in 2019. Cap's going to go up, and he was younger, so he definitely had that going for him, the younger factor. But I think 10.25 would be about right for William Nylander. Yes, he is either 27 or 28, so this deal would take him into his mid-30s, but I think if you're the Leafs, you really can't lose him. You definitely can't lose him for nothing. Yes, you would get that cap space back, but I'd rather have William Nylander than 2 $5 million forwards that get you 45 points each. I'd rather have that superstar, that game breaker. So William Nylander, I'm going to go 8 years, $10.25 million. Next up, Elias Pettersson. I'm going to go a little bit interesting on this. I'm only going to go 5 years at 11.75. Let's just talk about him first right off the rip. Obviously, he has 25 points in 15 games, leading the entire NHL. He's been fantastic. He's really established himself as a superstar. Last year, 102. He's fantastic defensively. But when looking at the term of this, he said when it came to re-signing, the number one thing that he cares about right now is team success, and the Canucks are definitely having that. But is he going to be willing to commit 8 years, assuming they make the playoffs, after just 1 year of making the playoffs? I definitely have some reservations. And if you look at him, he's only 24, 25 years old. So if he takes this 5-year deal, he'd still be setting himself up for when he's 30 years old. He's fantastic. He's still going to get another 8-year deal. So I don't have him getting 8 years. You look at Nylander, 28 years old when he hits free agency. This is his last payday. He's going to get those 8 years. I could see Pettersson taking a 5-year deal just to give himself that flexibility if the Vancouver Canucks, because let's be honest, they're not the greatest prospect pool. If they're the core, maybe this is just a 1-year fantastic season. So when looking at Pettersson, I'm going 5 years, $11.75 million. Next up, we got one of the most underrated players in the entire league, in my opinion, Sam Reinhart. 10 goals. 11 assists for 21 points right now in 14 games. He's been the best player on the entire team, a team with Tkachuk, who was amazing last year. Barkov, he has been the number one player. And he's been one of the most underrated two-way wingers in the league for the past couple of years, in my opinion. 2 years ago, he had 82 points in 78 games. Obviously, Florida's team as a whole, offense as a whole, was insane back then. Last year, he did dip a little bit to 67 points in 82 games, but he's fantastic defensively. I think he's definitely closer to that 82-point player than that 67 based on the amazing start that he's had. And if he gets 90 points, you look at a comparable, maybe like a Timo Meier that got 8.8 after not a 90-point season. I think you're going to have to give Sam Reinhart something around $9 million. Reinhart is 28 years old right now, so I think he'd be 29 or turn 29 right after he signed his deal. So the AAV would be a little bit lower considering his age. So 8 years, $9.9 million total makes about sense for Sam Reinhart. Next up, a really interesting one for me is Moritz Seider. You look at Moritz Seider, you look at some of his comparables at Jake Sanderson and Owen Power. They really got paid 8x8, 8.35. I have Seider only at 8 years, 8.25. I think he is a better defenseman, more proven than the other two. He also is older. He's a year older than Sanderson, a year older than Power. But I think Yzerman's going to sit him down and say, Larkin's making 8.7. He's our franchise center. You're a franchise defenseman. DeBrincat's playing fantastic. He's only making 7.8. I can't justify you at least giving you more than Larkin. So no 8.75, no 9 million. And so, yeah, I think they get him on a pretty reasonable 8-year, $8.25 million. Seider appears to be a legit number one. He obviously had that down year where he only scored 42 points. This year, 11 points in 15 games. I think that he's going to go for around 55, 60 points while being solid defensively. So he's a legit number one, but I can easily see Yzerman kind of buying him on board of the process of the overall thing. And that would be a very good deal. If they get him at 8.25, that would be like an A- deal in my opinion. Next up, a guy that hasn't really taken that next step this year, Matty Beniers. 57 points last year. He only has 7 in 15 games right now with 1 goal. He's shooting an abysmal 4%. So I think unless he really bounces back and gets to at least 57 points again, probably closer to like more than 60, it's probably in the best interest of both him and maybe even the club to kind of just go on a bridge. I have him signing a 3-year, $6 million bridge. He's only 21 years old or 20 years old. So like he's still very young, but if you're Beniers, I don't think you cash out on like an 8-year, $7.5 million deal after such a down year. I think you take that bridge, you keep on getting better the next 3 years. Then in 3 years, when the cap's higher, when you're back to 70, 75, maybe even 80 points, then you cash in for like an $8.59 million contract then. But I think right now, and especially if you're Seattle, you don't want to commit massive money. You already kind of took a risk on Vince Dunn, even though Vince Dunn seems like a stud. He's repeating kind of what he did last year. I'm not sure you're ready to give him an 8-year, $7.58 million contract. So I got a 3x6 for Matty Beniers. Next up, Elias Lindholm. Really interesting one because before the season, in my opinion at least, he was once Scheifele signed that 7-year, $8.5 million deal. I'm like, that's what the Flames are going to have to give Elias Lindholm in order to sign him. But Lindholm has struggled to start the year. Right now, he only has 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points. This is a guy that had 40 and 42 years ago, then 22 goals, 40 assists for 62 points last year. And then he's on pace for like 46 or 47 points right now. So if you're the Calgary Flames, not that you don't want him performing, but you might have saved some money. I have him signing a 6-year, $7.75 million contract. So basically high-end second-line money, low-end first-line money, because that's what I think Elias Lindholm is. Like, let's be honest. He is not a number one center on a true contender, a true playoff team. Yes, he was in 2022, but that was because he had like the best or second best winger in all of hockey in Johnny Gaudreau and another 100. He was the third best player on that line. He was not the true number one center of that team. So when looking at Lindholm, given his age, he is 29 years old. I think a 6-year deal does make some sense. It might not be with Calgary. This is probably the first guy where I don't think that he's probably going to re-sign with his team, especially if they trade Zadorov, trade Hanifin, make a bunch of moves. Lindholm on the open market, I could see him getting like a 6-year, $7.75 million contract. Next up, a really interesting one, Quinton Byfield. Obviously playing fantastic right now. He has 13 points in 14 games. Granted, only 2 of those are goals. But when looking at Quinton Byfield, if you're the LA Kings and he goes on to have a even 55, 60-point season, are you willing to commit big money to him? I have him signing a 2-year, $4.25 million contract. That's assuming he ends up in the mid-50s. I think that's about fair. And if you're the LA Kings, you have kind of this core that's locked in. Maybe wait until some of the money comes off the books, then bridge Byfield after like 2 very good years, because it is risky. He's obviously playing top line. He's been fantastic, but he is the third best player on that line. So I think they keep it cheap with Byfield with maybe a 2 to 3 year deal because their core is such win now right now. So maybe you just try to get Byfield on a discount for those 2 to 3 years, go deep in the playoffs. Then once the Kopitar Dowdies are starting to phase off, then you give Byfield this mega deal and kind of build around him. So I think that's about fair. Next up, Philip Hronek. Interesting one, man. Hronek, obviously 16 points in 14 games right now, all of those assists. Him and Quinn Hughes have been so good. The advanced stats have been solid. They have a 52% expected goal share, but in terms of actual goals, they've been on the ice together in terms of even strength play. 16 goals for, 5 goals assists, 5 goals against. So they've been that's like a 76% goal share. So they've been absolutely killing it. I think he's going to end up in like the mid 50s. I don't think he's going to be above like a point per game for the entire season. Vancouver's just going off right now. They're scoring 4.4 goals a game. But I think Hronek is a legit number 2. I really liked him in Detroit, especially his final year was very good. The deal was a little bit of a head scratcher at the time when they traded away Horvat, then traded for Hronek. That was a little weird, but it's working out. They're playing fucking great right now. So when looking at that, I think he is going to come back down to earth, but I have him signing an 8-year, $6.75 million contract. So legit number 2 money. I don't think he has the track record to get into those 7s like a Devontae's. If he ends up getting like 60 points, maybe that's a different story. Maybe then you got to give him 7. But if I'm the Canucks, I am definitely locking him up because he's been fantastic. He's helped Quinn Hughes be by far the Norris favorite right now. So it's just been great. And Philip Hronek has really lived up to the price that they paid for him and what they were expecting. Next up, an interesting one. We got Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond, I am going to go with a bridge. I'm going to go with a 3-year, $6.75 million bridge. It seems like he's going to take that next step and become a legit mid-60s point guy this year. It definitely is in part because he's playing on the same line as Larkin and DeBrincat, who are absolutely cooking. But when I look at Lucas Raymond, I think he is eventually going to be an elite number 1 center. If you can get him on an 8-year, 7.5, 7.75, maybe you just lock that up, hope that he continues to develop. Do I think he's ever going to be a true number 1, 85 to 90 point guy? I don't know at this point, but when looking at him, he's obviously a great piece. So I think maybe you bridge him right now, unless he really breaks out, then just lock him up. But honestly, if you're Raymond, you probably take that bridge, continue to get better, and then get that payday. Moving on, Martin Necas. I'm going with an 8-year, $7.25 million contract. 71 points last year. This year he has 12 in 15 games, which is about 67-point pace. So if he goes back-to-back years of around 65 to 70 points, I think 7.25 is a pretty fair number. And then looking at the Canes as a whole, they'd have Aho at 9.75, Svech at 7.8, and Necas at 7.25 till 2029 with the cap exploding. Those guys all basically in their prime. That is a very good cap structure. I think Necas is a good first liner. I don't even know. He doesn't really play first line in Carolina, I believe. He plays second line, but most teams would be that's just the team fit and whatever. But he's a very good first liner, elite forward. So I think 7.25 makes some sense. An interesting one, Steven Stamkos. We got 3 more to go. Steven Stamkos, 3 years, $7.75 million. This is an interesting one. I think he's going to take somewhat of a team-friendly deal. What happened with this was he was disappointed in Tampa, but I understood where Tampa was coming from in terms of not offering him some massive deal this summer because he went from 106 points to 84, which 84 is still very impressive, but they were seeing if there was another regression that might have happened this year. Say if he had 70 points, then you have a guy that went from 106, 84, 70, and then they already, like the last summer, they locked him into a 4-year, $8.5 million contract. That would have not looked good, but he clearly still has his game. He has 15 points in 13 games thus far. So I think 7.75 might seem a little bit low, but he is going to start regressing. He is 33. This deal's going to kick in at 34. I think he can hover around point per game, and for a guy that is basically an all-offense forward at this point, not the elite goal scorer that we used to do. No, he can get 30 to 35, but he's not getting 40 plus anymore. I think 7.75, maybe even 8. I think 8 might be more fair. I'll go 3 years, $8 million. The second to last one, Jake Guentzel. I'm going 8 years, $8.25 million. He's a weird one because their core is obviously so much older than Guentzel. So I think Dubas, even though Guentzel's, I think, is going to be 30 years old when this deal kicks in, I don't think he cares about like the future that much of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're going to stink regardless in 3 to 4 years. So if you're Dubas, just sign Guentzel to that 8-year deal in order to get that AAV low. Because if it was a 4 or 5 year deal, you'd be looking at around $9 million for a guy that was 37 goals, 36 assists, 73 points in about 77 games last year. This year, 16 points in 13 games. So I think you give him that 8 years, kind of similar to what the Capitals did with Tom Wilson. Like, we all know that Tom Wilson deal is going to be atrocious down the road, but the Washington Capitals are going to be rebuilding then. Once Crosby retires, you make Guentzel the captain in 2028, 2029, when he still has 4 years left on that massive deal and you're rebuilding. So it kind of makes sense to just lock him up, get that cap hit low, go on one last run, all that fun stuff. And then lastly, Tyler Toffoli. Will this be with the New Jersey Devils? I don't know because he's playing so good. eight goals, 6 assists for 14 points in just 13 games right now. I have him signing a 3-year deal at $7 million. You look at him, he is going to be 32 years old when this deal kicks in. Will he have that great of longevity going forward? I don't know. But he's killed it. I mean, 73 points last year. Obviously, if Hughes comes back, they keep on playing together. He has a chance to be your 73 points, 35 goals again. I think this is very comparable to like the Joe Pavelski deal in 2019. Pavelski was older. Pavelski signed for 3 years, $7 million as well. Obviously, Pavelski is a lot more like legendary than Tyler Toffoli, but two older guys that can still absolutely play, put the puck in the back of the net. So I think Tyler Toffoli, 3 years at $7 million. I don't think anybody's going to give him like $5-6 million considering he's going to be 32. And I think $7 million is about fair. That's around first liner money, and especially built in that there's a chance because he's so old that he might start to fall off. That seems about fair. So that's it. Those are the picks. William Nylander, 8 years, 10.25. Pettersson, 5 years, 11.75. Reinhart, 8 years, $9 million. Seider, 8 years, 8.25. Beniers, 3x6. Lindholm, 6 years, 7.75. Byfield, 2 years, 4.2. Hronek, 8 years, 6.75. Raymond, 3 years, 6.5. Necas, 8 years, 7.25. Stamkos, 3 years, $8 million. Guentzel, 8 years, 8.25. And then Toffoli, 3 years, $7 million. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about some of these picks? Comment down below any other pending free agents that you want me to go over. I'll happily give you my prediction. And what do you think about this? Is Nylander getting too much money? Is Pettersson worth $13 million? You could probably make a case at this point. I want to hear from you guys, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.